Hi, welcome to Triggered Care. I'm Alex. Today I want to talk about caregivers, the special people in our lives who become our chosen family and help us through the recovery process. Being in a relationship is rough, even without trauma playing a role. PTSD added to relationships add quite a bit onto a relationship workload. First, I'm going to define relational triggers and give some examples. Then I'm going to go through 6 tips that might help those caregivers and supportive people in our lives to understand and hopefully help with communication struggles and find ways to alleviate relationship tensions. All right, so relationship triggers, what are those? They are words, tone of voice, body language, etc. that initiates our fight or flight response from trauma survivors of prolonged emotional, mental, or psychological abuse. So, example, my husband coming home from work. If he looks frustrated, if he looks like he's irritated and not in a happy place, that can trigger me out where I take responsibility for that mood of his and then I turn into a mute for a while because I'm afraid. Being in the car with my husband, if he raises his voice to me, even if it's not full on yelling, he just raises his voice, it can trigger me out into an episode and cause hallucinations, psychotic stuff, not good stuff. And finally, when my husband leaves town for work, I've talked about this a few times on the channel, I get very paranoid and delusional when he leaves for an extended period of time. So those are some examples of how in my life, what relational triggers I have. Now, let's go through the 6 tips for caregivers. Tip number 1, if you trigger your partner, it doesn't mean you're at fault. And what I mean by that is when a relationship trigger arises, it can feel very intense for the traumatized person, while the non-traumatized person doesn't see anything bad about it, which can lead to accidentally triggering the traumatized person out more. When this happens, caregivers, keep in mind it is not your fault. Their experience is very different from yours in terms of what relationship language means. You've accidentally stepped on a mental landmine you probably didn't know existed in the first place. It can be hard to tell oftentimes because as a survivor, our learned response to hurt triggers is to disassociate and protect ourselves. So when it happens, we sometimes don't say anything at all. That survival shell is initiated, which may make us either extremely sad, mad, numb. During these times, it's easy to blame yourself. Like, look what I did to my loved one. You are not at fault in this situation. These intense feelings you're watching us go through is a result of our past abuser's treatment of us, not yours. Oh, so I lost where I was. Hold on just a second. We have a lot of unprocessed hurt, which can be very easy to trigger out. It's also natural for us to project that hurt onto our safe person if we feel like we can't escape the situation. You can still help us out of the trigger, but it's going to take some time for us to ground again in order to talk about it. The best way to know what to do is to ask with patience and a gentle tone, would you be able to talk about what's on your mind now, or would some alone time be helpful, along with reminding your partner that you love them and didn't mean to hurt them. Sharing your thought process is sometimes helpful, sometimes not. It's about open communication at this time and allowing your partner the time and space to figure out what is going on themselves so they can share with you. So that was my pre-written thing for the tip. I just want to add for personal stuff, my husband had quite struggle with this, with realizing that when he triggers me out, it's not his fault. He very much takes a lot of the blame for my feelings. When he accidentally triggers me and I get extremely sad, upset in an episode, he will naturally try to take that blame on himself and be like, oh my God, look what I did to you. And it's not him doing that to me. It's my past abusers doing that to me. But now I'm in a safer environment where those feelings can kind of bubble up and manifest more rather than just going mute or numb. And that hurt that I'm feeling isn't from him. That hurt is from other people. And so I hope that you guys can figure that out, that if you're with your partner, you trigger them out and they get really upset, it's not your fault. That's from other people. All right, so tip number 2, learn the difference between them grounded and them disassociated. This one will probably take time, but it can be very helpful for us to have someone give us a heads up that we're disassociating. We tend to do it a lot without noticing. It's like a normal stance for a lot of survivors to be disassociated. So recovery can be helped quite a lot if we have a partner who notices when we're disassociating. Some telltale signs is if your partner is having a hard time understanding or hearing what you're saying. If your partner is giving autopilot responses, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm all right, I'm just tired, I don't know what I'm thinking about. Where your partner seems reluctant to talk or give out any information of what's on their mind. Far off gaze that they seem to be trapped in, but they're irritated or apathetic if you try to grab their attention. They're misnaming things or people around them and seem heavily distracted while trying to get something else done. They're motionless, like they're waiting for something for extended periods of time. Everyone's different, so along with observing, ask your partner what they notice about themselves when they're disassociated. It can help with intimacy, along with trust for your partner to know that you're paying attention to them because you care. Tip number 3, let your partner be alone when they're overwhelmed and want to be alone. This is a huge one. I know this can feel counterintuitive when situations come up. You see your partner in distress and you want to help so badly, but they're becoming more upset with you no matter what you say. During these times, it can be hard to override your desire to stay and fix what's wrong, but oftentimes for us survivors, having anyone in the room with us can be triggering, no matter what they're saying or how they're saying it. We need time to ground and relax, and that can be impossible if we feel like someone's watching us. Giving your partner time and letting them know that where you are in case they do need you is the best way to assure them you're there for support if they need it, but understand that sometimes grounding isn't doable with you around. And my husband has definitely struggled with this sometimes. When I first had my episodes, he would not want to leave me alone at all. Understandably so, he was worried, but what he didn't realize was me having somebody in the room, even someone who I love and trust the most in my life, is not helpful when I'm in an episode like that. Sometimes it takes me being alone for my brain finally to calm down and being like, all right, we're safe. Nobody else is here. What's going on? I can think and analyze about this now. So keeping that in mind, if they want to be alone, let them be alone for a bit. It can really help us ground a lot faster if we can have control of our surroundings and make that safe space for ourselves. All right, tip number 4, do not touch them when they are in a flashback or episode. Living through a flashback is hell. Having to watch a loved one go through it is its own sort of hell too. It's taxing, and the intensity of emotions and pain you witness your partner going through may make you want to hug them and reassure them that everything is okay. Unfortunately, for us survivors, any touch we feel may feed into whatever flashback is going on, pushing us deeper into the episode and making us feel unsafe. It can make the situation more unsafe if we feel like we have to fight our way out, leading to violent outbursts. The best way to avoid this is to not touch your partner at all during an intense episode unless you get verbal permission to touch them. It can be hard to tell when we're flashing back sometimes until it hits us like a brick. So if your partner is being extra jumpy, startling easily, etc., the best way to go about finding out what's going on is to ask first and keep your hands to yourself unless your partner asks for physical touch. Talking through the flashback can be helpful, but if your partner is too afraid to talk, the best thing may be to put on a distraction to help them ground, like a funny show or happy music. Once they're grounded and feeling better, it's time to ask questions and give hugs. So that's another big one where me and my husband have had struggles with this, because when I'm in an episode, when I'm crying, his instinctual reaction is to come give me a hug or to rub my back or to do something to try to calm me down. However, if I'm deep in a flashback and I feel somebody touching me, that can ignite that fight response or that flight response where I want to run away because I'm not clear on who's in the room with me. I'm not clear on what's going on, and it can push me deeper. And he's gotten so much better about asking, like, hey, can I touch you now? Or, do you want a hug? And allowing me some of my own bodily control back so I can tell him when I feel grounded enough or safe enough to be touched. All right, tip number 5. Be open to different communication styles. Talking is great when it's doable. Unfortunately, talking can also make survivors a bit nervous, and one accidental trigger and it can turn impossible. So get into the habit of texting, messaging, writing letters, etc. with each other. So if there is something they want to share but don't know how to talk about it, they have the ability to write it down instead. And for the last tip, remember to take care of yourself. Don't neglect yourself. It can be overwhelming and all-encompassing dealing with a severe trauma in a relationship. You need to set aside your own self-care time, whether it's going to do a hobby a few nights a week, going to a favorite spot for some alone time, whatever it is that helps you relax and recharge. We don't want everything to be about us and our trauma. It takes up a lot of space. It can be hard to step out of that space without guilt and worry about how your partner is doing. But your mental health is just as important as ours. Your partner will be happier knowing that you're self-caring too. So when you're with your partner, you have more focus and patience when dealing with episodes and flashbacks. Make sure you're able to vent. Have a support system for yourself to make sure you're not overworked. Trauma is very heavy, and even if you weren't there witnessing your partner live through the trauma, witnessing the aftermath of trauma can be traumatizing itself. There's absolutely no shame in needing some mental health support when you're caretaking for someone you love deeply, watching stress torture your partner. That in itself is a very stressful situation to be in, let alone living in at times. That's very important for you to take care of yourself, and so you're more happy to be around us. If you know what I mean? Like, you're going to be happier to be with your partner if you feel like you're taking care of yourself and that you have the energy and the focus to deal with this hard stuff. I hope this was helpful for both survivors and caregivers. Relationships take work, just like processing trauma does. It's impossible to find a good routine, or it's not impossible. I misspoke. That sounds really sad. It's possible to find a good routine that helps everyone involved. All the links for all the cool stuff are down below, and I hope y'all have good ones.